just go and do it and see what happens.
Ideas are worth like jack shit, absolute jack shit. Like if you can't execute, there's nothing.
Just take that initiative to actually take whatever crazy ideas that they might have and just try to see what comes of it.
Don't be afraid of ambition. Chase it, love it, wrap your arms around it and say it out loud.
New Zealanders don't know any better. They will just get up and give it a shot. That's why we were first to get to the top of Mount Everest.
Go to dream that ultimate dream. Like, what is it that you ultimately want to do? And it's all achievable.
I actually left school to become a trumpet player. That for a few years was a lot of fun. Not particularly successful financially, I don't think, but that's why I moved to Wellington. I love Wellington as a city. I went to banking for a little bit and eventually founded Sharesies, which is close to 9 years ago now, alongside 5 others. And of that 6, 5 of us are still active in the business today.
People are kind of feeling for the scale.
Yeah, so Sharesies is... we now have about 900,000 customers on the retail side of the business across Australia and New Zealand. We're primarily known as an investment platform, more and more building out broader wealth, and part of that is teaching people actually what a wealth platform means. So it's going to be a big part of our future. We actually have 2 other strategic pillars. So the second one is a B2B business, which is like investor relations service. We're really trying to encourage as many companies as possible to give their employees shares of the business that they own for, that they work for, because we think it's an amazing wealth development opportunity. And we have about 600 businesses as customers, and that's a far more global opportunity for Sharesies. So those businesses are in 10 countries already. And we have some very large businesses as customers, the likes of Fonterra, Spark in New Zealand, Westpac Group in Australia, and many, many more. But it's a really big focus for us. And the third pillar of our business is the technology broadly, or that underpins those 2 customer bases, is all proprietary. So we build it all ourselves. And the reason for that is because no one would sell us theirs 8 years ago. So it's a little bit of an accidental strategy. But when you're trying to make 1 cent investing available, and the cheapest anyone will partner for you with is like $30 per trade or something like that, then you have no choice but to go and give it a go yourself. Anyway, fast forward sort of 5 or 6 years, we realized just how valuable that technology might be, because most of the world's wealth is sitting on very, very old tech. So businesses actually started approaching us, asking us how we're doing these sorts of things. And then we started selling it. So, I think ultimately, when we fast forward 10 years, the reputation of Sharesies will be more likely to be a global wealth technology platform that also has a really strong retail presence in Australia.
Great, thank you. David.
Hey, hi. Hey everyone, my name's David. I'm co-founder and CEO of VeVe. I've been in the collectible industry for 28 years. Our collectible market is $450 billion a year. Many of you probably know what I started out on tabletop games. 97, I brought in Pokemon and Warhammer into New Zealand, and I still own one of the longest surviving chain store around the world as of today. In 2017, my co-founder, which is also Leighton's friend, old friend, in the days, we basically decided, how do we bring collectible into the digital? So we started a company called VeVe, just to give you an idea, the sizable market and where we are. Since we launched in 2021, GMV in our app has grossed around $2.2 billion in revenue. And our customer base is just slightly under 1 million accounts that holds or purchase our product, and our market is all around the world. We work with some of the world's largest brands, such as Disney, Marvel, Paramount Pictures, Warner Brothers, DC, Universal, all the major studios and the brands has a placement in our app. So that's where we are.
So hi, I'm Penny, CEO and co-founder of Crimson Academies. So we started 5 years ago as a subsidiary of Crimson Education. Under Jamie Bean, we launched our first online school, Crimson Global Academy. We started with 20 students here in New Zealand. We now have 2,800 students joining us live in 72 countries around the world in live classes. We started with just high school, and now we have primary through high school, and we've gone from one school in the online space. We've now moved into the physical space. We've launched hybrid. We've launched another another 3 schools, have another 2 coming up. So that's sort of the span of the last 5 years. We were predominantly in, I guess, BSc space directly with students, but we've also, over the last year, been working directly in the B2B space with the teacher shortages that are facing schools all around the world. So we plug in directly to schools and deliver their education and classes where they have the teacher shortage for specialist subjects. So we start expanding into that.
Excellent. Maybe kicking off with something, I guess, more challenging. The biggest challenge is scaling a global company from New Zealand to Belgium. From some people, time zone, it's not great to really work with the UK. New Zealand is a small place, so it's not necessarily known. Like, what has been your single biggest challenge when you're thinking about building a global business from New Zealand? And I know Sharesies is more Australian, New Zealand, but yeah.
Although, Leighton, you told me that it's, is there in 27 countries?
Yeah, we've got 10 in the VeVe side. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the hardest things I do is a founder, the best, you can speak to as many advisors or experts about anything that you want, but actually, like, consistently the most valuable conversations are with people who have been there and done it before. I think New Zealand, just by nature of our stage and this ecosystem and stuff, has a little bit of a shortage of people who have done that. I think those who have are very, got some, I can see in the room today, it's people are very generous with their time and their capital, if that's true. But getting time with those people, I think is just super, super valuable. And if we can create these ecosystems, that's why I love events like this, where we can create this chance for connection and hopefully share more stories about it, because it's just, in our experience, I think better than hearing it from someone who's done it before. And normally that person doesn't have an answer for you. They just tell you how many times they were knocked down before they got it right or something like that. That would be the first thing. The only other thing I'd say, in our world, regulation is very, very heavy. We deal with retail investors. We have, with regards to the FMA, which is our regulator in New Zealand, and ASIC, which is our regulator in Australia, we basically hold the highest tier of license that they offer, which means we get the largest amounts of oversight, and they require us to hold the largest amount of capital for those. So it's like sort of the worst of all worlds. Obviously, that's a very big moat if you get there. But one of the things you never get to do again, which is something we maybe had a challenge with. It took us a couple of years to start getting our license in Australia. All new businesses do get the benefit of no one knowing who they are. And if no one knows who you are, you're not a risk, and most people don't really care about you. You really care about that as a founder, because you want everyone to care about you. But it's actually a really valuable thing for when you just get started, particularly with things like people like regulators or things like that, who ultimately do want to see disruption and that sort of thing, and they're keen to work and see that happen. But you just never get the opportunity to be measured as unknown again. So in our case, when we went to Australia, this was already a reasonably large brand in New Zealand, a few 100,000 customers. So all of a sudden, you don't get the opportunity of no one in the regulator caring about you or anything. You're straight to their like peak risks. That's for banking. That's for all these sorts of things. So yeah, I think that'd probably be something.
Interesting, yeah. So being the underdog helps with kind of regulatory things.
Yeah, well, I mean, with everything, to be honest, like people forgive you a lot more in your early days for everything. That would be true as well.
Pina, how about you? What did you say? How many countries? 72.
72. We're also highly regulated as well in education. But I guess the general premise of it's hard for New Zealand to go global, I would dispute that. I think we have one of the best countries to go global from. I think there is a few pieces there. One is there's sort of this novelty factor. I remember when I turned up in Arizona to meet their government board, and they were so excited to meet someone from New Zealand. It was almost like a celebrity moment. Someone flew all the way here from New Zealand, and they don't, it's a very competitive space, and, everyone else that was pitching on that day was all local, and so they didn't get that cut through. So I think there's that novelty factor. And then in New Zealand, from a talent point of view, we're quite lucky for people to be happy to skew generalist. In other markets, you will find a lot of specialist talent, particularly as you look in the US and the UK and even Europe. Generalist skill sets are not as prevalent as they are here, and particularly in early stage startup, people who are willing to get in and do a bit of marketing, do a bit of product. Then there are financing. You find a lot of those people here, you find less of them overseas. So I would say that, plus we're in quite a nice time zone. Cost of labor is not as high as in other places. It's actually a sweet spot, except if you're working with the UK. And I usually tell...
But that's the time difference.
Yeah, I usually tell startup founders not to look at UK. It's the big sort of opportunity. I would go to the US first, but...
Yeah, and the generalist point we heard earlier before today. So it seems like a real mode for New Zealand talent that people are happy to do whatever it takes, basically. David, what's your experience?
Yeah, so our experience and our journey is very, very different than most startup. Number one is we actually don't have a headquarter. So our entire company is decentralized. So everyone work from home. You're probably not going to hear that from any other startup around. That's number one. Because we founded our company while we were traveling overseas, and when we launched the product, the COVID came, and that was one of the reasons. Our staff is cross global in 11 countries. We work basically 24/7 through every time zone you can imagine. Some of my advice to founders here will be: don't be afraid to go and look for talent overseas. You're not going to find everything you need and that solution here locally. The industry we are doing, the digital collectibles, the NFT side, it was unheard of. In 2017, when the business was launched, no one could even understand what I was pitching. Going into Disney, Brothers, Universal Studio, Paramount Pictures, you can imagine every single meeting, they have no idea what we were talking about. Every single time we went back slowly, like you had mentioned, they really just wanted to see two New Zealanders have no idea what the hell they were talking about, so they can have a laugh. Down to towards the end with Warner Brother, I remember sitting down and there was about 25 people in the room. We were almost pitching to them, teaching them what this industry and the future of media will look like. And from there onwards, the industry really needed a lot of education because no one even heard of it in 2017. Our business quickly took off in 2021. Many of you probably heard there was an artist called VeVe. He sold his digital artwork for $68 or $69 million, and everyone showed interest. And we basically called that when we grew, we really had to understand many issues like jurisdictions. Every country were looking at what we call crypto digital asset very differently. Some treat it as security products, some treat it as very favorable. Different administrations have different takes on it. So you probably noticed the recent administration in the US, the Trump era, they taking crypto and digital asset more favorable, and they embrace that, the technology behind it on that blockchain. So, and that was probably one of the reasons why we never settled a country there to have the headquarters, because we never knew if the law is going to change favorably or not. But don't be afraid to go out. There's a lot of talent out there. And the sooner you actually step outside New Zealand, you'll start to learn how the rest of the world works and the way. So some of our challenges is really working around that 24/7 time zone. And pretty much myself and my co-founder, we have an early shift in the evening shift. Pretty much between two of us, we cover that clock. That was one of the most challenging part in regulatory mentioned.
Maybe like building on that story of 2021, your business taking off. Any, do you guys have similar stories where you saw, first it was a local New Zealand business, but something happened where like you realized, okay, this is going to be a global business. Was there a moment like that or a story or something that, someone gave it?
Yeah. For us, our revenue was coming in.
David did that. I'm asking the other guys.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
For ours was very similar timing. It was actually, rewind. Firstly, it was definitely on a whiteboard 8 or 9 years ago. So like we're sort of seeing that future for sure as something that we would do. And then when COVID came, David just sort of mentioned winds then. And I'm a big believer in like don't bother about fighting the wind, go with where the wind's blowing, because your business is pretty a zigzaggy thing. And we've tried to fight it a couple of times, but when you get the tailwinds behind you, you feel it in lots of ways. And like oddly, COVID, which was, equally a terrifying time for lots of reasons, markets crashing, all that sort of stuff. But all of a sudden, lots of people at home and we'd sign up to apps and buy a big market app. So our growth just started to really go through there. And then since then we've had like multiple multiple points of Tailwind, and then our job is to like try to get people to ingrain good habits after that. Like in my view, it doesn't matter what captures someone. What matters is how you make them stick afterwards. But also identifying when those wins are at your back to invest into them, do whatever you can to make the most of them is really critical as well. But the first, like, sort of just as an example of sort of scale change prior to the COVID sort of time, that was only 2 years into our business journey. And our first year at Sharesies, we did like $1 million of trade volume in total, like in a few months. And then into that COVID period, that escalated to sort of like $30 or $40 million in a day. And then these days it's more like $120 or $150 million a day. So it's like sort of mad to think that actually when you look back on it, but those like there's a great thing with technology, right?
It sounds like COVID was also.
I suppose COVID is a tailwind for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, if there was ever a time to launch an online school, 2020 was the moment. So we launched with 20 students here in New Zealand, March 2020. We'd gone through everything 2018, 2019 to set up. 2020 is when we launched. And then immediately from 20 students through to, 1,000 pretty quickly, continued to scale. Students started to join from around the world, and then we started to build this, real global community, and we had to set up timetables. We run almost a 24/7 timetable now, so students in any geography and time zone can join us. COVID, and then, really making the most of that to set up and establish in each of the regions where we have a high density of customers or students to make sure that we weren't just there for a passing sort of moment. It was really kind of embedding in each of those regions.
So advice for entrepreneurs is to predict the global pandemic.
Never waste a crisis.
By the way, we have the QR code up, so if you want to ask some questions, please feel free, and Mark will monitor the questions coming in and pick whatever he likes most, I guess. Just a more, I guess, here's the founder question. There's some founders that really love that very early stage, kind of 0 to 0.5 or 0 to 1. Small teams, you have to do everything. You really understand each and every detail of the business. And then there's some that like the scale-up stage. You've done both. What was your favorite, and how was the transition from being like, scrappy founder just trying to make things work, maybe $1 million in trade volume per day to like, not even per day, total to like 150 per day. Yeah, what was that transition like, and which phase do you prefer?
I've enjoyed the whole lot, to be honest. I used to think that there was like a messy middle, I would say, where I sort of, business was going quite well, and really you get to this thing where you go from, I don't know, for us it was probably around 150 staff, something like that, where you've all of a sudden got multiple layers of hierarchy. What you say doesn't necessarily go immediately. How you communicate it matters, all those sorts of things. I think maybe we suffered from. I don't think being too nice is a problem. I think you can be really clear and nice. We certainly obviously were clear enough anyway on our expectations. And I found that period very hard. And that was mostly because I don't think we felt like we were delivering value to business. But whenever I feel like I'm delivering value, I'm really enjoying it. And I like we have a very privileged position where we get to choose what we do every day. These days we can hire people to do the jobs we don't want to do and are not particularly good at, and they do them really well. It allows us to, I think my job, I still spend like probably half my time dreaming big and thinking quite big. Another half my time, like really granular, looking at like the designs and what content people putting out there, and like just really caring about those details. And then maybe the other thing about founders life, like another half my time managing stakeholders. So
and another half on top of that as well.
Yeah.
We actually don't have the money to turn it on because we have to pay the AWS bill. So we're very lucky he had about 60,000 credit with his venture company. So we got that 60,000. That was actually going to keep us going for 18 months with the way I think it was. In the end, that 60 grand only went for, I think, 5 to 6 weeks. That's how much AWS cloud we were using. So number one is, we were very much in the shoestring budget. We were going under and going through that massive growth where ASB banks are ringing me up to go, well, where's all this money coming in? It wasn't even in my mind. I was just thinking, well, how are we going to grow? How are we going to find the key people? The part I really enjoy what we do is that we consistently keep our value in our company. So for all the founders out there, your value is going to be very important that you need to believe and keep in, where the culture and the company is always going to evolve. Obviously, the startup culture is very different when you go through that growth phase, because you have a lot more responsibility and stakeholders you need to think about, and the ethic and all the people around the world. So I found the value is important, and the culture will just continue to grow. From that side, that's for me for now.
On my side, I'd say, just thinking about the last few years, I'm very much in the scale up space. That is my sweet spot, because I think, early days, that just makes me feel anxious thinking about that runway. I'm not sure if anyone else sort of palpitations. Versus you have this sort of opportunity when you are slightly bigger, and I think again most that's 150-ish mark, and we're sitting at about 600 now, including our contracted teachers. You just have so much optionality in terms of, I can have a team over here that's building the next product, while that one is scaling this one. I can put a bench on this market, and all of these sort of options that you can have spinning at the same time, and you have access to great talent. And as you think about evolving your organization and where you're going to go next, you have options to move all the people around and constantly kind of fitting this nice little jigsaw puzzle.
But you had dramas and I was going to say you.
Oh my gosh, that's right. But that's the great part, right?
Is it?
I think so. My background pre this was people and culture, and so for me, this is my jam. People, structure, org design, team dynamics. I'm like, that's my jam. So to me, this spot of how do we get outcomes through our people in the scale up stage?
But you also have more responsibility, right? Like you're now serving thousands of students, and they trust you with the education, which is obviously.
But you also there is a certain level of comfort that comes with scale, right? First, when you are running a school with 30 students, and one of our schools at the moment has 70 students, because it's in the very, very early days, that is to make the margins, to pull all the levers to make that work is incredibly hard. So it's actually much more high stakes when you are that small versus when you are sort of at 3,000. There is a certain level of we can deliver on every single thing that we say, and now we're looking at the core system. So I'd say the pressure actually is a little bit less, because you're less worried about runway. You can look at your forecasts and you have a certain amount of certainty about what cash is coming in, what markets are going to perform. You can almost sort of predict now with 5 years of growing different markets. This market has this seasonality on this date. Year-on-year growth is going to be X. Versus early days, you're like, I think we'll make some money. So it gives you, I think it takes the pressure off a little bit, even though the responsibility into.
Being a New Zealand company, how have you found raising money? And was it easy? Was it hard? David, I know you raised at the very top of the market.
Raising was terrible for us. I'm probably not one of the CEO who will go out and sell the story like a lot of people do. I believe in the industry we're in. I've been in it for 28 years. It's very hard sell. I mean, a lot of people didn't understand the product that we were selling, and that was actually the hardest part. So I think at the end of the day, we didn't raise any money. The only person we got some money from actually sued us for the money to take it back. By the time we give it back, the company went like a rocket ship, and then he sued back to go, actually the one back now. So terrible at raising funds, and it's not because the pitch wasn't great. The presentation was amazing. Obviously, we have some of the world's biggest brand on our platform, and I'm pitching to the presidents of all these organizations and studios and getting them on board. But, investors have a different mindset, and in general, what we found is we probably think too big, and maybe you need to cut down the pieces to the smaller pieces that they can understand and fundraise from there. So it was harder for me, and the appetite here was definitely much smaller than we were hoping for.
Yeah, we've raised quite a lot of money for New Zealand scouts. I think maybe, I should know this number probably, but would keep me awake at night if I did. I think it's about 120 million of primary capital. We've actually just recently done our first quite large secondary round, which was a pretty epic experience, getting to repay early shareholders for their belief in us, and quite fantastic shareholder. But I think that's been a real milestone, and I do believe that the easiest way to raise money is doing what we're doing right now, which is our bank account grows every month because the business is doing well. But, that's only been true for us for the last 12 months or so. And I think the raising of capital is really important to us. I think we got lucky timing wise, probably that we caught that sort of boom coming into, probably just just prior to the end of 2022 when things got very, very hard, and that's starting to come back now, particularly if you've got AI in your name, it seems. I think we did go out with a story. We told, we were building this thing, and we were I think we were delivering on it too, but we were trying to tell people the story we were telling because, as I say, Sharesies needs a whole best part of $25 or $30 million just for regulatory requirements. It's like, we're only making $300,000 of revenue a year, but we actually need this much just to sit there. It's a bit of a hard sell, so you really need to tell people what the story is and what you could be. And thankfully, we found enough people who believed in that and could see the traction. And that's where that ecosystem comes in. There's people who've been there and seen it before and they had success with it, so they could believe it. Only other point I'd make is I think Sharesies still has one really large raise left in it for this sort of global platform I was talking about. And the timing for that is going to be where we think global sales to be really genuinely scaled. And I think we've got quite good at choosing those moments. This capital round we've just done, for example, we could have taken a lot more capital if we'd wanted for the company, but we decided that, to Dave's point, possibly that probably wasn't going to incentivize the business in the way we needed to, or the best way we thought to grow. So we're in a slightly different sort of stage of life, but lots of lessons along the way for that. But I never forget that we're spending other people's money, and always remember that and remind our team of that too.
And is there any growth capital available in this?
Growth capital, yeah. We've been lucky enough to raise both in New Zealand and the States and Australia as well. So I think there is growth capital for companies available, and I think there's more and more. And I think KiwiSaver in particular is going to create a boom for this because people are looking at more private assets, and KiwiSaver managers are getting to the point now where listed markets aren't, they've got too much money for that. So I think it's just going to continue to drive. I think there's a real opportunity for I do believe it's a great way of growing companies.
You had something you got. How much of a sell did you have to, convince them that you're going to be operating globally or in the US in particular, or were they flexible about?
Yeah, so the question was for US funding. We needed, whether it was just we had to sell an international story or just New Zealand. One of the great things about financial services are there's lots of there's lots of $1 billion businesses in New Zealand that are in financial services. So it wasn't hard to believe that worst case, it could still be a very, very large business if we just won New Zealand. That said, there was always a premium on valuation for Australian traction, and the people are now and there's quite a few platforms like Sharesies around the world. You go to Canada, you got Wealthsimple, you got Robinhood, the US, there's a one called Free Trade in the UK. We sort of all came up around the same time, but we have this unique side, which is our B2B arm. And investors from around the world love something that they know your business, they know they can be successful, but that you've got this extra power up that they haven't seen somewhere. So that's been really valuable for us as well.
And it's an interesting one as well for the questions I've seen time and time again. It's like US funding, great. When is the founder moving to the US? So there's some belief that, New Zealand, that was a nice little testing ground, but now go to America. We've been quite lucky in terms of getting quite a bit of New Zealand funding. We closed our Series D last year, which was led by Movac, and previously we were starting out was by Lighthouse, and have now taken on investment from Australian firms, firms in Asia and China and the US, and a really broad mix. To Philip's point, of thinking about that investment is not necessarily just where they are from, but also what they're going to change in your organization. Because I've seen in every sort of round we've taken on a different sort of flavor that brings into the organization, and different expectations of where your growth will come from. So we'd be reasonably cautious on that. But New Zealand I found to be incredibly supportive, and some of our best and most supportive and most kind of open, connecting VCs.
This really interesting point though, on the type of investor that we've experienced is, I think, because we're in financial services, sometimes we've struggled in New Zealand to sell the dream to financial services people. In fact, the people close to it here are the hardest to get across the line. But in the States, all of our shareholders are people who have invested in Robinhood and in wealth. It's like, we know this is what we can help you with. This is where we can add value. That's like a sort of slightly weird. I was just thinking about it. Didn't really observe it that much myself, although I have identified that. I don't know. I
Just
honestly
maybe
don't.
have seen what can happen.
Yeah, well, actually, some people have told me the reason is they thought the market wasn't big enough for what we were proposing. And the thing they missed was that they thought we would be stealing their customers, not bringing on a whole bunch of people who had never invested before. That's the bit they missed. And so that's an observation from a New Zealand investor who opted not to invest into us. But we say that we had a lot of New Zealand support as well. You guys and a lot of others around. We think we could have done really well out of New Zealand, and we were in the privileged position, ultimately being able to find people who could add value to our cap table or to our business and go for higher valuations and great terms.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I know we're not in Q&A yet,
No.
but how did you navigate when you were entering into those conversations? You're like Robin Hood, but both simple, but a little bit different. How much were you able to lead that story versus constantly getting reference back to you?
I think for years we tried to avoid it, and particularly Robin Hood got a bit of I've been lucky enough to meet the founding team and stuff of Robin Hood now, and I think they're really genuine people and I think they've got a strong purpose, but they got some really bad media earlier for things, and it wasn't in line with the purpose of what Sharesies was trying to do. So it was way easier for a company called Wealth Simple, which was in Canada, who seemed like they were very on track with what we were doing. So we were sort of far happy with that comparator. I guess we had a bit of self-ego thing. I was like, no, we're definitely different. These days, it's way easier to just be like, yeah, big on like the Robin Hood of New Zealand plus a B2B side. Like, that's we're more like that.
I felt you were a little bit offended when I said you were kind of like Robin Hood.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure if I would have been offended.
But is there a perception against, U.S. investors saying like, well, we have an expectation that you're going to grow into the U.S., but we're worried about Robin Hood and how does that work? Have you had those conversations?
Yeah, any investors that just want a company that's going to be in the US, I know that Sharesies isn't on their roadmap. So it tends to be more people who have observed how good Robin has gone in the US. Most of our shareholders don't believe that it's easy to cross borders with business like ours. Like, there's just so few examples of global financial service firms. Robinhood has tried it themselves. There's lots of other business and to no success so far. So they tend to be sort of like, all right, well, we tried that, they've tried it. Actually, what we should do is go invest at whoever's got the home market.
Yeah, who are your, you've gotten to a good low scale, all three of you. Who are your heroes, both like from an individual point of view, from a company point of view? Who do you look up to? Because I think in the Valley, it's fairly easy to see like, oh, this guy who I knew became, made a lot of money or became a big, exit founder, took a company public. Here in New Zealand, it's harder to see that. So how do you think about the future and who do you look up to?
For us was around these addressable, sizable market, and just saying the collectible market, especially trading cards recently, we could sell every single product we get a day. If I have $5 million product of stock, I can sell it this afternoon. So that addressable market at 450 billion US a year, it was big enough. And the convergence of that digital and gaming and where that audience all coming. So we looked at companies like Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft, all these addressable market, and the audience in this space, when they grow up, they're going to really understand digital asset because they're almost investing all their pocket money into playing card or the online game and that character. So what we see, and we believe in 5-6 years more time to come out of it, that addressable market will be even bigger. One example will be taking Pokemon cards. And I think the addressable market is about 3 or 4 billion US a year. And it's the first product that really has 3 generations of collectibles of age groups. Where we were a kid, and when our parent ordered for us, we're buying for our kids and so on. So there's generations of it. And if you look at when we started our business, we actually met another company that would try to break into the market. And a lot of you guys would know that company called Popmart. We were talking to the founders. They were stretching their head, trying to raise $10 million. We were stretching our head, trying to raise $1 million to launch. And that synergy, how we can bring that physical with that digital element, try to understand that addressable market. By themselves, I think they're about $3 billion company today and turnover with a market value of $50 billion. So our hero is really that market is so big that if we can have a pie of it, that will be.
So David, yeah, you don't care that like you don't have any heroes around. You're just like, there's a big enough market.
I learn from lots of different people all the time. I don't think I necessarily hear, or not in my mind, I don't hear people's not to say I don't really appreciate catching up and meeting new people, and sometimes feeling a bit like, wow, it's crazy that I'll just spend some time with you or something like that does still happen. And obviously lucky enough now to meet lots of people like that. But like, I think normally how I come away feeling is like how they've treated me or the time that they've given or the generosity of it or something like that. And then I would say internally at Sharesies, there's like heaps of people that I look up to. It's like people who I've seen work with us for like, is certainly my co-founders and like our board and our shareholders who've been with us along the ride and all of that. And then, particularly people who've been long serving at the business. I've come to like really value tenure at a business is probably the best thing. Like you just can't deliver that much value if you haven't been there long enough to see like bit of shit go wrong, or see how this culture gets through it and really be that. So, I think we've been really, Sharesies now has an average tenure of a bit over 4 years. I think that's the reason why we're able to deliver just way more product than we've ever been able to deliver. So I really value that. There's just heaps of people in the business for different reasons that I really look up to.
Yeah, it's tricky when you get this question and suddenly your mind goes blank because you forget names. But I think of, where I learn a lot from is my competitors that are publicly listed and need to share their annual report. It's a great source of inspiration. And then sort of second to that is just really early stage companies. I love my like mentor conversations because when you get to a point of scale, one thing, you deal with all the drama. There's a lot of people that just tell you like, no, or we've always done it this way, or like that's too hard. And suddenly you're trying to get, 100, 200 people on board with this vision. And then you spend time with an early stage startup who is right at that anything is possible. I always leave those conversations being like, yes, I'm going to go jump back in and sort of drive that energy. So, that and, lots of other sort of just niche use cases, but I don't think it needs to be like this one size fits all.
You're now 3 big companies, global scale, thousands, millions of customers, millions of funding and so on. What gets you up in the morning still? And where do you want, like, what's the end game? Like, where do you go from there?
I'll start because this is just top of mind for me. So when we started in the education space, we started in private education, and our goal has always been great. We will sort of prune out a new model of education, and then we will start to work with governments and scale in, make it accessible. And so we've just announced opening February will be New Zealand's first online charter school, so fully funded online tuition in New Zealand. So a fully funded school for New Zealand kids, which is just amazing. And that's our end goal, is how do we partner with governments in New Zealand and around the world and take that model.
So this is full curriculum.
Yeah, I just want to, because you're going over it quickly. I think, so you're the first online school.
First online.
Started, and people can sign up their kids.
Yep, we are running it is first in, first serve, no prerequisites, years 9 through 12. Next year will be year 13 as well for 2027. We're fully funded, so you can join us online for free. There's no additional fees. And so anywhere in New Zealand, 80,000 kids in New Zealand who are chronically absent from school and just a rising sort of mental health pandemic. And so to be able to give students access to teachers for around New Zealand and the world, and to be able to do that for free. So I am like, anyone just on that, because there are lots of students in New Zealand who do not have access to internet on laptops and devices, and I do not want that to be a barrier to them accessing education. Reach out to me if your organizations or anyone who can help and be able to provide that for your student.
So that's what still gets you excited.
Yeah. That is like, we have done this model. It works. I see like students, genuine life-saving, changing education for them, and they've gone on to do amazing things, or just being able to get out of bed in the morning and not hate school. I just want to bring that to more people.
And do you see higher education as the next?
Yeah, it's a natural kind of next step, particularly as you think about what just the future of work looks like. And I think about even what our kids are studying right now and how they're studying and how they're engaging with technology. I'm like, what does work look like for them in 2 years is something that keeps me up. So the natural kind of next step would be reshape hiring.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, 3 things that get me up. But the first, very practically, is 2 children. Most mornings they came in with an energy, which I think is always a great perspective. And personally, love hanging out with kids and stuff, and I like the freedom that they have in the world, and I think it helps me a person who's otherwise very obsessed with work. Like just break away from that. And it's probably, most of my working career, I haven't had that until I had kids really. So that's the first thing. The why of it is still the purpose of the business. I love hearing that people have started growing an investment portfolio on Sharesies. Almost everyone now, if you ask them, could you be an investor, they would say, yeah, I can. But the brand awareness and stuff is big enough. We still haven't quite got over that hurdle of are you doing it in a meaningful amount that's going to ultimately change your life? So it's like that drive. If you were to say Sharesies' strategy was access, confidence, and motivation is the three things you needed to deliver good financial outcomes, then I think access is solved. Once upon a time, that was a problem. It's no longer a problem. Confidence and motivation are 50 or 60 years as CEO of Sharesies will be saying, I'm just trying to get people confident and motivated because it's so generational, time-based, all these sorts of things will be a forever problem. And then practically, the third one, the what, is I just love solving big problems. I think I was to say I had a unique strength, which I've been lucky enough to be asked a few times, and as a result, convinced for. I think it's been able to see big problems as a million little ones, and then knowing that it doesn't really matter which one I start on as long as I start on one of them. And I go to work every day and I sort of pretty much write myself a list of little problems that I can solve today that I know are going to move us in that direction.
Yeah, and for myself, what's keeping me awake, in a couple of weeks' time, our ad is going to be celebrating 5th birthday. And we're basically doing a live event with our community at Las Vegas. So what keeps me up is the community that we have built. One of the key pillars of our success is that we have thousands and thousands of fans that will come to our events, celebrate together. It's like a lifestyle. So that's number one.
Quick comment on that. The episode we did together with you on the podcast is the one that got the most comments in the YouTube channel saying, "Oh, we love VeVe."
So it's really important to grow that audience and that community. And I think when you want to build a great product out of New Zealand, you always need to think about the most important, well, people love this product globally. That's the key. To do that, what keeps me up is the most important is we want our brand to be the authority in the collectible market. So when you Google Star Wars tonight about the best Star Wars lightsaber being sold, our company is going to rank number one because we deal with Star Wars, we deal with these brands. And then become that authority in that industry is going to be that key pillar, and ensuring that the word gets out. And that when we foster that, our community will grow together. So that's an important part for us. So yeah, community, build a product that people will love, that really keeps me up. And the third part is that, like any startup out there, when you go through that growth phase, probably consider to be the chaos person in the company. I create a lot of chaos. And not because I want to or not, it's just the habit that I really think sometimes you need to be very agile. If something doesn't really go that way, didn't work, the numbers are not stacking up, you need to do a U-turn, you should. You really need to understand sometimes we invest into certain sectors in the app, the features, or certain product line that it doesn't work, you just need to write it off. By crossing it off, it could be a $2-3 million mistakes. So you really need to embrace your decisions out there.
Well, in AI, most people probably presume we're talking about asking the robust homework roles. Whether I guess if you want to try to scale up a international teaching and training model, if we try to say get to 80,000 or so students in New Zealand who may not have full access to education, is AI a viable technique that could be used to try and embrace this large enough?
In terms of the role of a human teacher versus AI, and I think there's still going to be those limitations in terms of AI letting you sort of take the easy path versus the teacher maybe going, I think you could be challenged a little bit more. So I think there's always going to be a role to play there. But in terms of getting that scale, there is a finite number of teachers that exist, and that's why we see these teacher shortages. So I see a model in which the two work together. So we look at, with the models that we've deployed, we're looking at how do we reduce administrative time from teachers. So supporting them with marking and grading, obviously they still do it, but supporting them with that time and taking those things off their templates so they can spend more quality time with students and more contact time. And I think that's probably the sweet spot. Then at the same time, the revision tooling, we've got a full teaching assistant that we deployed into the primary space. And that's been really interesting in terms of seeing what questions the kids will ask the AI teacher versus the actual teacher. And we can monitor that, and we pull reporting and stuff, and the teacher can see it. Kids, and this is kids 6 years and up, just feel way more comfortable asking a question that they're not putting their hand up to ask in class. So I think we've got to naturally sort of lean into that and find a safe way to do it in a really ethical way. And at the same time, we need to be teaching our kids how to use that technology and how to spot it and what is a scam and things like that. And I think the current education model is one, turning a blind eye to it, and then we don't know about it, and then two is just not really redesigning the education system for it. Any education system that relies on memorization and things like that is not setting the kids up to actually be able to sort of engage in that future. So they need to change the whole model. There we go. I'll get off my soapbox.
Penny, maybe you can answer the question about how do we create more those kinds of companies, these kinds of entrepreneurs in New Zealand.
Yeah, one thing I'm seeing at the moment, and this is just very top of mind because it's been over the last few weeks, is we've been hiring for a lot of roles, and there have been so many incredible university students that have applied that just have been out of work or not able to find work. There's no grad position, and these are amazing talent. And I would say because they are not necessarily, they haven't worked in a place before, maybe they have less experience, they have less to unlearn. And so being able to come into an organization and really adapt and move quickly, they're just so much incredible talent. And I chat to them, and I had one who went for an interview and just burst into tears in the first 5 minutes because nobody was even looking at their CV, and they are incredible. So I would say for companies, particularly if you're early stage, just putting a job on student job search, trying to work with students, those kind of the compounding effects of getting that access to these types of organizations early on is what's going to compound. By the time they're in their 30s, they'll be on their second or third company by then, and they'll be.
Do you tell any of them to start a company?
Yep. Absolutely. We actually have another program we run, which is an accelerator program where we invest in that. Yeah. We invest in our own students and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one sole objective basically, which is to get more people to start, right? And I mean start normally, I personally think in 100% way. So we need to create an environment where more people will just go 100% into whatever this problem is, and then just by nature of percentages, a bunch of them will come out of it, and then some of them will try again, and some of them will be like, that's not for me, right? But the more people, it would be scary to think how many people who would be amazing at this, but get that start date. And that's a really common thing. And part of that, New Zealanders are we're such humble people. You spend any time outside of New Zealand and you realize that, and it is obviously a real amazing strength of us, but not particularly helpful for global business or even local business actually. So, and I don't know how that problem breaks down, but I know how we tackle it at Sharesies, which is, I often remind people if I feel like they've been too humble or something like that on behalf of Sharesies, that they can be as humble as they like. I think we're humble people, but I don't think Sharesies is a very humble brand. It's hey, you know what? I'm going to turn up to all the big blue banks. I'm going to wear pink, and I'm going to give them the middle finger and say, I'm going to go get bigger than you, or however that is. That was the brand that Sharesies arrived with, and it was if there is a media article about anything money related, I want to be it. And I want to represent people it's quite freeing for me if I ever have doubt in my own position being somewhere or something like that. I'm just what would Sharesies do? And it's it would take that opportunity, and because it's got this purpose behind it that it feels like it needs to be in its space for. So I think we could have a culture of creating these really confident and stuff, and not necessarily lose some of the amazing things about the human psyche of New Zealanders and stuff, because I think that's really fantastic too. So I'd love to have more answers on that, but fundamentally it comes down to get more people a start day.
Sounds great. But thank you for coming to this panel. It's been really, really great to hear from some scale-ups in New Zealand and see that you can make it to a global brand out of New Zealand. So thank you so much for joining us, and give them a round of applause.
Thank you for tuning in to TechMates. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. We'll be back soon with more stories of Kiwi and Aussie founders reshaping the future and disrupting down under. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to disrupt.